We got soul satisfaction.
Okay, hey, how's it going, everybody? It's been it's been a couple months since I've put a video out. We have been going through some, we're under construction for the podcast. Just been doing a bunch of, kind of been aimless a little bit ever since we put the new video out, which kind of sat back and watched the activity on that video happen for about a month. I didn't want to overshadow it with too many videos. Wanted to kind of give it its own space to grow. So anyways, this podcast is going to be about. I came up with a checklist for you guys out there, you artists. Basically, a checklist that will kind of help you figure out if you're moving into what I would call the top 10% of musicians. They say that, the 1% is in most fields, it's the minority, or the small percentage that gets the majority. And that's always been, that's basically everybody's biggest hurdle, is how do you get into that 1% category. I'm not concerned about the 1% category. I'm actually more concerned about if you can get yourself into the top 10%, then I think that you can actually have a successful, we'll call it a micro career, because this podcast focuses on the micro music business. So there's my little hook. Yeah, I really just steer away from that whole macro side mentality. If you're tuning in for the first time, that's ultimately why I created this podcast. And I like to reiterate that every once in a while. Because sometimes I have guests on, and if people are tuning in for the first time, I don't always announce the fact that this podcast is for the micro music business. It's how to stay small but successful without overwhelming yourself, without overreaching. And anyways, so I'm going to get back to my little checklist that I came up with, how to basically make sure that you're checking all these boxes to basically as guardrails and guidelines, because how do you know that what you're doing is working? And not just that, but how are you test marketing your songs? How are you test marketing your music? How are you test marketing your art? All that good stuff. So I'm going to make this kind of quick. I've got kind of a long list here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just kind of like run through these. Some of them are you're going to find some of these, and I'm not trying to be reductive or oversimplified or anything like that, or too obvious, but I just think that I like to go down to the very micro end of things, and so I don't mean for some of these things to sound maybe like duh, like I'm not being condescending. I know some of these things are going to be extremely obvious, but there's basically a reason why I made this list the way I did. I tried to prioritize them, but eventually I get about halfway through, and then the prioritization kind of gets derailed. So just bear with me. But ultimately, these are the things that if you are going to try to put yourself in what I would call the top 10% of professional musicians, because that's ultimately where you want to be. You can't get to the 1% unless you're in the top 10%. So, I'm just going to go ahead and run through these pretty quick. So, Number one, do you write music? And the reason why that's important is because, I mean specifically you. Are you the one who's writing the songs for your band? Or are you an artist that writes your own music? And that's not always, it's not as obvious as you think, because there's a lot of people that play in bands, that play original music in original bands, but they don't really write. So, do you write music? Do you have songs? It's kind of redundant, but not really. Just because you write music doesn't mean that you write good songs or songs that people actually want to hear. You know, this stuff is very subjective. So if I sound a little brutal on this, there's a reason why. It's because I want you guys to understand that with everything that I'm checking, with every box that I'm checking down the list, you have to ask yourself, like, am I doing this? Am I screwing this up? So, number 3, do you have a band? Okay. Do you have gigs? And if you are getting gigs, when you play a gig, do you get asked back? That's obviously extremely important. If you play places and then you notice that you're only playing places once and you're not being asked back, you might want to, check your songwriting. And again, this is specifically for artists. I'm not talking, this podcast, and I do have to reiterate this every once in a while. This podcast is not geared towards cover bands. So if you're in a cover band, this is not really stuff that's geared towards you. Maybe a little bit. I'm sure we can find similarities or parallels, but that's not why I started this podcast. This podcast is really about helping songwriters and artists, and staying on the micro end so that we can, be successful, but still be under the radar enough to where we can have comfortable lives. Do you record? So, do you have a studio that you go to? Do you have gear in your house? Do you record in your house? You have to be recording somehow, because if you're not recording your ideas, then how do you know your ideas are? I mean, that's just part of it. When I say do you record, I don't really mean professionally. Like, I'm not asking, like, are you putting out professional product? I mean, are you just recording your ideas? Are you getting them down so that way you can listen back to them and make them better? That's really what I mean by that. So, okay, and then it gets a little deeper. Do you have an album? Or are you working on an album? And if you are working on an album, are you doing that through a home studio, or do you have an actual studio that you go to with an engineer and or producer? Okay, so it starts getting deeper as we go along here. If you have recorded an album, have you done your due diligence? Have you done your digital, signed up with your digital distribution? Have you signed up with your PRO, which is your Performing Rights Organization, ASCAP, BMI, CSAC? For us, it's ASCAP and BMI. And me personally, I go with ASCAP. A lot of people ask, well, what's the point of even going through a Performing Rights Organization? Ultimately, if your music ever gets played on TV and actually hits, actually shows up on a cue sheet for one of these companies, one of these, PROs somewhere, because that's how you get paid. If your song gets played on a television show, that song, the title and the songwriter of that, that text gets put onto a cue sheet that gets sent over to ASCAP, and that's how you actually end up collecting royalties, film and television royalties. So I always tell people that you should sign up with a PRO, because what happens if one of your song accidentally gets put on a movie and you don't have that all squared away. So you don't want that, there's those possibilities do exist. So you want to just cover all your bases. We'll keep going down the list here. Do you have a genuine following? A genuine following. What I would say is, what are you doing to build a fan base? Are you doing anything to build a fan base? And the way that I am basically working on, like, how I'm doing it myself personally, is I'm really just using YouTube and getting subscribers, and that's helping me with building my fan base, because when you get subscribers, you have, people who are actually paying attention to you, and it becomes a tangible thing, a lot of the times, when you go out and play a club, you do a really great gig, everybody loves you, and then you never talk to those people again. And I've noticed that getting subscribers to help you build your fan base, it's like you get to, these people are connected to you, so it becomes more tangible. And on the micro end of that mentality is, we don't need a million fans. If you're trying to, come at this from this angle of, oh, I'm going to get 1 million fans, like, those numbers are just kind of ridiculous. I know extremely talented people who are just monster players. They're very good at the business end of it, and they've got, like, in the tens of thousands of subscribers, and that's really good. So we don't need these grandiose numbers. What we really need is 1,000 tangible followers, 1,000 real subscribers, 1,000 real fans. That's what we really need. And if you have that, then you can start building a real career for yourself. So that's what I'm doing to help with my fan base and following. So I'll keep going down the list here. Do you play outside of your town? So we've established that, okay, if you are playing gigs, well, then you're playing gigs in your town. Now, are you broadening yourselves? Are you, playing outside of your town? And if you are playing outside of your town, what's the mile radius, the furthest mile radius that you've gone? Are you planning to keep expanding and extending that? Some of this stuff is a little out of order. Like, this should have been earlier, but, like, do you have social, do you have your social media? I mean, I hate social media personally, but, you got to be participating in some of that. Figure out which one you like. Personally, I'm not a fan of TikTok for my own reasons. So I don't use TikTok. A lot of people are like, man, you're like you're blowing it on that. So, if you're comfortable with it, I mean, more power to you. I typically use Facebook, which really brings me to a good point. Because I do have a little piece of wisdom that I want to give you guys. Something I just experienced. For I don't know, probably about 6 years, I've held off on paying for a Facebook ad, and to boost, a post of mine. So I just came out with this new music video, and I waited about a week, and then I dropped like $115 on this Facebook ad, and they basically send it out, and I mean, they sent it out to like thousands of people, and it was not worth it. I just want to let you guys know, if you're thinking about doing a Facebook ad, don't. It's not worth it. you're basically I would say you're actually opening yourself up to just spam and trolls. Um, and it's not worth it. I think we reached like 20 people out of like I don't know how many thousands of people that it got sent to actually looked at it, and those numbers are absolutely horrendous. So if you're thinking about doing Facebook ads, I would say don't do it. It did not work for me. It was I totally regret it. Something that I am going to try though, and I'll be putting this probably on the next one after I try it. I haven't done a Spotify ad yet, and I think doing a Spotify ad might be a better way to promote a song than through Facebook ad. So it's something I'm going to try, but definitely, sorry, Mark Zuckerberg, but I tried to boost my post, and I totally regret it, and it just wasn't worth it. So I'll get back to where I was going with that. But obviously, you got to have some social media going on. Okay, so figure out which one you like, which one you're more comfortable with. That's kind of where I'm at with that. Okay, and then I'll just keep going down the list here. Do you have a YouTube channel? I kind of covered that, right? Because it's all about subscribers, you guys. I know that it's a new world. If you want to build your music business is really going to be built on the backs of your subscribers, because otherwise we don't really have a captive audience that will pay attention to what we're doing. If they subscribe to you, they're willingly saying, yeah, I'm interested in what you're doing. It's not like you're asking them to pay for the subscription. It's just something free. It's just to keep people informed, and there's really nothing wrong with that. So that's something I had to kind of get around, which is like just asking people to subscribe without feeling ashamed, because like you're not asking them to buy something. And if you know anything about sales, I mean, in fact, I need to do a podcast on sales tactics. In fact, I will do that. I'm going to do that on the next one. I've been watching a lot of The Apprentice, which I know that's probably a touchy subject for some people, but business wise and sales wise, like there's things that you have to know when it comes to sales. And so I'm going to definitely do, my next podcast will be basically kind of like a 101 course on sales and, things that you need to do and things that you need to stay away from doing. There's a lot of tricks and little tactics that people go in when they go into sales. They approach it like a salesperson, and that's wrong. So I know that it's going to sound a little weird, but salespeople know what I'm talking about. You don't really sell anybody on anything. People can detect the sleazeball car salesman, that snake oil kind of personality. They can detect that. They can detect when you're patronizing them. They can detect when you're being overly nice, all that crap. But anyways, it's really about, make sure you've got a YouTube channel, and then I'm going to keep going down the list here. Well, why do you need a YouTube channel? Because, are you making music videos? Are you making videos at all? Are you making, are you recording your shows? Are you doing all that stuff? Now, here's the thing. I see a lot of people, they'll get clips of their live performances on phones, and then they'll post those to the social media. And when I'm talking about videos, that's not really what I'm talking about. And here's the thing that really gets on my nerves about that. People overly post their gigs from their phones, right? These little clips. And the sound is terrible. Okay, because when you're trying to pick up that amount of volume and just that amount, that really just that amount of volume, and you're trying to get it through this little phone speaker, this little phone microphone. um, I never really hear any of these bands sound. I mean, I'll click on it, and like in 3 seconds, I'm literally turning it off because the room sound is so bad that I can't really discern where the music is, because it's just, to me, it's just noise, you know? There's so much background noise. So those aren't the kinds of music, those aren't the videos I'm talking about, because everybody does that. But the problem is that everybody just, they do that and then they stop. That they don't go any further. Are you making music videos? A lot of people would say, well, you know, making music videos is kind of a thing of the past, you know, and they're not. They're not, you know. There's a lot of this new way of thinking that is just absolutely wrong. And I think that if you go down some of these paths, you're going to be cutting yourself off at the knees. Like, you know, I just saw a really great podcast on this one guy, just straight up coming right out and saying, you know, we're believing these lies, like records are dead, like and singles are where it's at. It's like, no. And the reason why, and this guy, I'm sorry I don't know his name, but I heard this guy say, no, that's absolutely wrong, because any artist, if you look at any artist through time, any artist that is actually a notable or basically anybody notable to be worthy of being called an artist or a musician that you know about, made records. And so that's what it is, because making a record isn't just making a song. You have to make a whole like a whole catalog of music that actually makes sense with each other. So there has to be, like, you know, there has to be like a vein, right? There has to be like a main vein. And so that's a lot more complex than just writing one song. Writing 10 songs that actually work together in a volume, that is a piece of art, and then it's a lost art. And so a lot of these, you know, new ways that people will just basically default to and get complacent in, I can't stand them, because if all you're doing is putting out little snippet videos, like, and I'm talking like 10, 15 seconds of your band where maybe it sounds pretty decent, you know, decent enough for you to want to like post it on social media, that's not doing anything for you. I'm sorry, it's not doing anything for you. And it's kind of annoying to the audience, because when I click on something, I'm expecting something good. And then it's like, it's all just background noise and people talking and a little bit of music. And the music it's not like fantastic, but it's like, it's such a short clip that you can't get a frame of reference of even what you're hearing. I think it's just lazy. That's where I was coming from. I just think it's just a lazy approach. I think that you guys should be getting creative, you know, because you'll be more memorable. It'll help your branding, you know, make music videos. That's definitely my, that's my little 2 cents. And they're a lot of fun. You can have a lot of fun making them, because they're like making little movies. So, okay. So we covered the YouTube channel, subscribers. Do you make videos? We're going to get into some of the branding. Do you have a logo? Okay. You got to have a logo. That's your branding, you know. That's how people are going to recognize you, just from a visual standpoint, just boom. Do you have merchandise? That's kind of the next step. If you have a logo, then you got to make some merchandise. You got to make some stickers. You got to make t-shirts. You got to get that logo on some swag. And you want to do that because, from my personal experience, and whenever we go out and play, we tend to sell t-shirts. You know, we usually get a t-shirt or two sold. You know, they're $20 a piece. So that it all helps. Oh, basically, are you trying to turn your band into a brand? Okay, so that's another level. Okay, so that's definitely we're definitely trying to separate our. At this point, we really are starting to separate ourselves from what I would call the other 90% of musicians, because 90% of people don't do this. 90% of bands don't do this. They don't turn their band into a brand. That's a whole nother level. That's the Kiss. That's what Kiss did. I mean, you don't have to be a fan of Kiss to be a fan of Kiss for Gene Simmons' business tactics. The guy's a genius. So, okay. Do you have a vision? And when I say, do you have a vision, that's really being more specific towards like your future vision and your marketing vision, and those two things really coincide with each other. Your marketing vision is going to establish your future. Your future vision should be intertwined with your marketing vision. I mean, those things are just they're hand in hand. And I guess what I'm talking about marketing vision, I'm talking about once you make an album, once you make a song, once you make a single, once you make a music video, what are you doing to get it out there? Are you just doing the same old thing, like, oh well, we posted on social media? And because that's basically what I just recently did was we put out a new song and a new video, which check it out. It's called Aiming Up, and if you guys have already subscribed, I thank you for your subscriptions. We're actually growing quite a bit, and it's all just because we decided to actually start putting energy into this. I didn't realize being a musician, you get tied up with so many other things, with just writing, trying to get band practices together, getting the band to just come together for gigs, for Christ's sakes. That's so you're dealing with so many other things, like getting subscribers. I didn't understand the gravity of it. I didn't understand the importance of it, and it finally dawned on me about a year and a half ago, and I just, once I started putting energy into it, we've been seeing nothing but steady growth, and that's really exciting, because I want you guys to remember that that's where you need to be putting a lot of your energy. And it's so cool because you can really just focus on being creative. Write your songs, record your songs, produce them, get them out there digitally, put out a physical product if you need to. Make sure your brand is all put together. Your logo, all that stuff, and just wash, rinse, and repeat. Put out a music video, keep, putting out good content into your YouTube channel. That doesn't mean every little video clip that you or some random stranger or your girlfriend or your wife decides to take of your band. You guys need to start using some freaking discernment and start scrutinizing your stuff, because when if all you're doing is putting out stuff that people ultimately aren't going to watch or listen to, like you're really just putting stuff out to like maybe serve your own ego. Like you don't really care about the content quality, and so to me that just means you don't care about your audience. And if you're going to put out content, use discernment and scrutinize it, and be a perfectionist, and put some real energy and work into it, so people go, oh, you got to check this out. Because nobody's definitely I mean, the way people share videos these days, man, people aren't going to share your little band clip video. Okay, that's not going to happen. Like they won't even share it if you put a really high quality video out half the time. But they're really not going to share it if you're just basically getting a reputation for putting out crappy little video clips. That's what you get a reputation for. So I'm not trying to be harsh. I just want you guys to like think and be more not just be more creative, but just be more thoughtful, that when you do put something out, it actually looks like you put some thought into it, because that's where the value is. And don't underestimate your audience. Don't think that you're, it's really narcissistic to think that people are dumb to be fooled by your low quality art. Okay. Like, just because it's art and it's subjective doesn't mean that you can fool people with something that's trying to be put off as something that has something that's parallel to talent. Okay? There's a lot of art out there that is not good. There's a lot of music out there that is not good. And I'm not saying that all I do is write good music. I know this because I wrote a lot of bad music to begin with, and that's part of this painful process that we're going through, is that a lot of you guys, you're sitting there going, oh yeah, check. Well, again, a lot of what I'm doing is, not just for, this isn't just for like beginners or people who are just coming into playing with a band, but just people who are in bands that really don't even put their own checklist together. It's like, wait, where am I measuring up? How am I measuring up in the grand scheme of this crazy industry? And anyways, it's really important, right? Because look, if you're not growing, if you don't feel like you're growing, why would you still do it? So I think this is just a good way to, put ourselves in check, and also be able to measure, and because it's hard to measure this kind of crazy career that we're trying to do. So, because it's all basically abstract. How do you measure the abstract? Well, I think this is a pretty good tangible list so far. So just to reiterate again where I'm coming from, guys. So, okay. Have you gone further and figured out, who's your demographic? Demographic has to do with, the age group, male, female, maybe the music you do, there's maybe a certain ethnicity or maybe race that tends to like, that style of music. I mean, what if you can figure out what your demographic is, that's just another, it's a good thing to know, because especially if you ever do get into any kind of like elevator statement situation, which you will. I mean, if you're trying to book yourself in clubs, people are going to ask you, what kind of style of music are you? And just putting yourself into a genre or a category, you are, you're trying to tell them what your demographic is. Okay. So when a club asks me, well, what kind of music do you play? We do original funk and soul, rock. Okay. That's the way I say it. And that lets them know, okay, so these guys play to maybe a little bit older, probably a little bit older, mature audience, not old, like, cause it's funk and soul. So that tells you, like, people who like to dance, but people who are also mature enough to appreciate funk and soul. So anyways, if you're clever enough, or figure out ways to be able to just describe your music, sometimes that'll help to, explain the demographic as well. Do you have plans to tour regionally? And why would you tour? Well, to promote a new product, because you put out an album, you've got merchandise, and you want to hit the road for a week or two to expand. Do you have the ability to tour or micro tour? And then for some of you guys who really are trying to take it to the next level, like me, who just want to be totally independent, are you coming up with other ways to pivot using music. For me, I'm doing this podcast. It's something that a lot of people are doing now, and the reason why I want to do a podcast is because I believe in being completely transparent. This is a format that you can't bullshit really. People are going to pick up on your bullshit because if what you're trying to do is contrived, and people can tell if you're contrived. The reason why I wanted to do this is because when my mind goes, it's in this constant state of flow, and I have a really hard time shutting up. But I think that that's where the transparency comes from, and this stuff is not scripted. And I think there's an element of not just creativity, but what I would call improvising, and that's how I think I can come off as the most truthful in this day and age. And I see these new podcasts trying to come out, and they're so bad because these aren't really honest, truthful people to begin with. And you can tell that they're coming out with a podcast because they're literally coming out with a podcast to push an agenda. And it's like, it's kind of too little too late for you. So I just wanted to reiterate that, if you're a completely honest, transparent person and you aren't afraid of just, basically opening up the fountainhead, so to speak, and just talking, I would say a podcast is probably really good for you, because you might need to do something like that, because if you're kind of a hyper-verbal person like me, people around you are going to not want to hear you. They don't want to talk to you about business. They don't want to talk to you about any of that stuff. And this is very cathartic for me, because this also acts as a almost like a video journal entry. So I get to get this stuff off my chest and put it out there. And it's very cathartic. It's very, very cathartic. So it's something to think about. And I know that was kind of long-winded, you guys, and I appreciate you hanging in there with me. I'm going to get out of here, and definitely stay tuned. We are in the middle of construction. We are expanding and building this podcast, and we've kind of been in the middle of expanding, and I've got a friend who's coming on board, and we've got a lot of exciting things happening. Especially this year. So I'm going to get out of here for now, and I hope that this list is helpful for you guys. And that was actually fun for me, just to be able to kind of just kind of get it all out there, the frustrations along with some of the stuff too. So cheers, and we'll see you guys next time. You guys are listening to the Jesse Lee Falls podcast, where we focus on the micro music business and band rescues.